Part 3 takes a step back from the act of making art, providing glimpses into creativity as the participants talk to each other about this experience during a Zoom session recorded at the completion of the project. I'd like to start off with talking about, from the artist's perspective, what they saw or felt or experienced in the way of music, and more specifically, well, not that it really matters, but we'll start off with Alan's piece only because that was the first one that they responded to several weeks ago. So if we could please start with Ellen, you could just say something about what was your reaction when you heard Alan's music, and just take it from there.
Okay, well, Alan, I guess you saw the two pieces that I made in reaction to your music. I have not in the past or before this painted from music. I find music to be quite abstract. It will provoke emotion with me, and that's how I responded to your work. It was the emotion that it provoked. I found that it had a couple of different movements in it, but it was a very dramatic pacing, which was somewhat quick, but it had a duration. And to make that work in a canvas, I had to have a way to having it move dramatically along, but not fall out of the canvas before your music was done. I chose landscape, which is generally what I paint anyway, but with yours, I really was responding to the dramatic movement by pretty strong lights and darks. The division of the values was really more dark than light, and it was more of a cooler tone than many of the works I've done. Now, with the path in the woods, you could see those stripings going up the path and then a diagonal movement, and that illustrates pretty much what I'm saying, but it might not be very apparent in the field at night. That has got the V-shape method of going in depth into a painting, or appearing to go into the depth of the painting, where it goes back to the horizon, then it comes back up through the sky, and the sky has the more dramatic movement in it.
Ellen is referring to both musical compositions when she says,
I was really trying to express not only my emotions, but the fact that both works provoked a sense of how to express it would be from expressing movement. So,
Alan, does that seem what you would have expected, or what is your reaction to that?
Well, I don't know exactly what I would have expected, because again, in a way, I feel the same way as Ellen, that music to me is very much an abstract art. I mean, yes, it certainly conveys emotions, and one of the things that any any worthy musician should be doing is trying to convey emotion and feeling in his or her music. But to me, the idea of trying to draw a picture in music or tell a story in music that's not inherently musical, that's very alien. So I really had no clear idea what to expect. But what strikes me, I mean, I was a little surprised in that one of the things I'd done when I created this piece to be painted from was build it around a very jagged motif, which goes sort of like bum 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 bum, and that's the kind of the motif that runs through the whole piece. And so I was expecting something somewhat more, I don't know, jagged or jerky or abrupt that would have captured that. But actually, when I think about it, that's kind of silly of me because that's the superficial aspect of the piece. And what I think Ellen did, and I really like, I think both of these paintings are fabulous, especially the horizontal one, because I love the contrast of you sort of have this sense of this peaceful landscape and then the very dramatic storm clouds and white, dark contrasts surrounding it. And I think that does, in a way, capture something that was in my piece, not just the superficial notes, but the underlying feeling of it. So I think it worked. I think it worked very well, and I'm really very pleased with what she came out with, and I sense a sense of connection between what I did and what she did.
Okay, good. All right. Deirdre, what was your response to Alan's music? Was it on the same order or different?
Um, uh, I was very surprised. I was skeptical that the music wasn't going to provide me with any visual image, which is how I work primarily. I mean, I get an idea, usually a very clear idea in my head. And the challenge is for me to try and represent that in a painting. So I was nervous about whether anything, especially classical music, which I readily admit I don't listen too much. It's pretty foreign to me. So anyway, I went into it with that kind of thought in my head. I was surprised how at the end of it, I got a very clear image, a really strong, clear image of sort of a walk from sort of a very peaceful place and towards something in the distance that was anything but peaceful. It was noisy, energetic, dramatic, just a very clear, there seemed to be in the music a real clear departure from the beginning and the end. And so that's what came to mind is kind of a path leading from a field to a city, perhaps. And so that's what I started to paint. And, about halfway through, I realized it was just too literal. And I was paying too much, I was being too faithful to this image in my head and not adhering to what I try to do in all my paintings, and that's to make an interesting painting. So I wasn't being true to the painting. I was still kind of stuck with this strong visual idea that I had. So that, it was really interesting for me. I I'll certainly listen to music again, especially if I don't have any ideas, because a lot of times I feel like there's too much time between paintings for me because I simply don't have an idea. So I think in the future, listening to music might help me, conjure up some ideas. So it was a surprise.
Okay. Alan, what is your response to that? The idea of a path and the increasing energy?
Well, it's actually pretty apt. I mean, the structure of my piece, it's in a three-part form. I mean, basically it starts out with that jagged motif, but the tone is relatively light. Then it sort of segues into a slower section where it starts out, the motif turns into a different, much more lyrical kind of theme. And that doesn't go on very long. And then when the motif comes back, but when the motif comes back, it's darker and
Yeah.
heavier, and it gets, you know, louder and heavier and kind of maybe a little meaner until it ends with a kind of a whomp.
Mhm.
So there's definitely, I mean, music does have kind of a narrative arc. Any really good piece of music is going to have some kind of a narrative arc, not in the sense of, and then Joe went into town and saw that, but in
Right.
its own internal musical logic.
Right.
And that can certainly translate into a path or a journey or something like that.
Right.
And though I thought, my first reaction to Deidre's painting is I noticed, and again, I'm not sure that the image captures it as well as I think the images, Ben, you sent of Ellen's paintings capture hers, because her palette, Ellen's palette, is much more vivid. So it comes, when you take a photograph like this, it comes across better. And Deidre's palette is a more muted earth tones quality. So it's a little hard, but my first reaction was, well, it seems rather formal and stately compared to what I was thinking my music was about.
Mm.
But as I looked at it and I saw how these boxes, which I guess is the urban feeling, kind of, are a bit of a, I sense it does have a tension in it that's in keeping with what I was doing. And then you have the path and the sense of a journey. So again, it's completely different from how Ellen looked at it, but it makes sense to me. I think it's very logical. And again, I think it's a gorgeous painting.
Going back to you, Ellen, could you please talk about your response to the folk music of Ron and Bob?
Well, when I listened to that again, I reacted, or I felt like how I was going to portray it would be dealing with portraying movement. But in the terms of the paintings I did for theirs, the movement, at least in the one with the tree in the path, it was like a couple that were going to just circle. They were spinning in place. The shadows were going around, they were there, but when later they're going to there, the time is causing the movement in that one. Whereas in the woodland path, or the stream is taking you through the thing. It's, to me, it was a lighter, warmer colors, help me portray the dance that I was feeling in that music.
Okay. Bob or Ron, either one, both? what the,
Yeah, I'll jump in.
sure.
Yeah, when I looked at Ellen's painting, I think I saw I think there's a liveliness to our piece, kind of a bubbliness. It's kind of reflected, I think, in the stream that Ellen painted, and a movement. And it is a folk piece, so it's apropos that it takes place in the woods, and a movement and a liveliness of the woods. I think she certainly captured that part of it. It's a gypsy tune. First part of it, Bob wrote. What's it called? Cantina Waltz.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, and it's a gypsy piece. So there is, the gypsies in the wagon moving along the path in the woods. It's a good image. The second part is which we attached to Bob's composition it's actually Dark Eyes. It's a Russian folk song that has a little darkness to it, I think. But the piece as a whole, it does come back. Dark Eyes does come back to Cantina Waltz, and it's not a complicated or heavy piece, I don't think, but I think it's a bubbly, folk dancing in the woods type of piece. And I think Ellen's, pieces capture that.
Right. Bob, you have anything to add to that? Is that your take also?
I could easily see myself sitting on or near that log playing without a care in the world, enjoying the colors. That's if that environment is not available to me, or environments like that, then I'll just make one in my head, evidently. If I were painting in my head playing, I could definitely see something along those lines. I like trees and slightly moving, peacefully moving water. And so I enjoyed the picture a lot.
I think Bob and I play a lot of music in the woods or in our backyard, looking at the woods. And we both, I think we both have a pretty good imagination. So a lot of times when we play, we close our eyes and then tell each other what we saw after we got done playing, and kind of conjure up images or dramatic scenes that might take place in the woods. So I think Ellen's paintings are kind of in keeping with what we see, at least what I see. Bob can speak for himself, but what I see, when I close my eyes and play, because I think there really is an element of synesthesia in music where you can see, some people see when they play, and they see colors, they see shapes. I don't necessarily see landscapes like either Deirdre or Alan played, but I do see shapes and I do see colors, which I guess are really just a visual translation of feelings. So I do see them, and I see that translated or expressed in Ellen's painting. That's what I mean by the bubbliness and the liveliness of it. The colors and the sense of movement. And that path, it certainly intimates some kind of movement through woods, through some kind of visual landscape.
And is that true also for Deirdre's, from your point of view?
Well, I with Deirdre, I have the advantage of her coming into my room and telling me every step of her painting along the line, which right. Took place for about a month. And
Not really.
Well, yes, really, but yeah, with her, one thing I think she captured. I mean, I think also, she gave us a woodsy kind of landscape, and she told me that what she saw when she listened to our music was a walk in the woods, going into behind the school and walking through that woods and seeing the woods kind of open up. So there's color in the middle and there's darkness on the sides. And I think the darkness is interesting because there is a darkness in gypsy music, and there is a darkness in the song Dark Eyes. So I like that kind of contrast that she has in her painting between the light and the darkness on the outside. Because most gypsy music there's a real sadness to it for good reason. And I think she captured that on the outside of the painting. And she told me that the painting's not done yet, so I'll take her word for that there'll be more light in the middle. And her idea was to give this sense of walking through the woods and have the light kind of open up as you walk through the woods. So again, I like Ellen. She has us in the woods where we belong, and she's giving us a contrast that I think is also in the painting, beside the bubbliness and the liveliness of it.
Deirdre, do you have anything to add to that?
Okay. My reaction to Ron and Bob's music was more, it wasn't as clear. I didn't really get a clear image. It was more a feeling. It was more amorphous kind of image that I started with, that I had. And that was oddly, I think, because with Alan's painting, music rather, I did have a very strong, clear image in my mind, that came to me listening to his music. With Ron and Bob, it wasn't quite as clear or as strong. It was more a feeling, is the best way to describe it. So it was going to be a landscape, and I think it's interesting that both Ellen and I chose landscapes and chose a path. I think that's really kind of remarkable in a way. But anyway, Ron describes it, I think, pretty well. I was trying to get, I love, the woods. I mean, it's especially, well, any kind of weather, really. The light is always changing, but particularly on a sunny day, and this is what the music kind of reminded me of, a walk in the woods on a sunny day. But that was, and just, a lot of different colors. And I did try to get this feeling of entering the woods, of going down that path, of something almost pulling you to the path. So I made the sides very dark, and concentrated on that center in terms of where I was going to put the light to try to get that feeling of moving forward. But what was fun and interesting about doing this painting, and Ron's right, I'm not pleased with it. I'm not finished. I mean, I will definitely go back and play with that again. But I found, because I didn't have such a clear idea in my head, that it was more, I felt freer. I felt like I could experiment more. So there were several things I did that I kind of thought were a little bit of a breakthrough for me. And that was using different materials that I don't normally use. I kind of do section in on one section. And the approach was much different with this painting, I was really stepping back and looking at the whole thing. And if I did something over in the right-hand corner or lower right, I had to do it. You know, I really started working all over. And one of the things I did was just to, I had a, you know, I wipe my brushes off with paper towels, and I accidentally dropped the towel full of paint on the painting. I love accidents, by the way, and this was a great accident. And I just started taking that paper towel and kind of dabbing it all over the painting. So I really had fun that way. These were just really, it just a very freeing kind of attitude and approach I had to doing this painting. So I thought, you know, it was really interesting for me. And like I said, I got to get back into it and listen to that music again and see what else, you know, I can do to kind of pull it together. But that was it was very enjoyable that time.
Good. Okay. I think when I was recording you, at one point you mentioned that you might in the future use music as a source.
Can you repeat that? What I used?
That you might use music as a source of inspiration, not all the time, but you know, as a.
Well, I will definitely, you know, consider using music again. There's always a point where I have to turn it off, though. You know, that it's too distracting for me.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but to listen to it, to kind of relax, get some ideas, or you know, just to kind of float off with it in the beginning is something I would really do again. But it is kind of interesting too. I have to turn it off at some point and concentrate on the painting. It's a distraction. So
Ellen, I was surprised when I was recording the number of times that you were playing music at the same time as not necessarily painting, but you were thinking about the painting. You had it literally on the wall or the table in front of you, and you would stop the music and you would paint, or sometimes you would keep the music on. But that you did not find that a distraction or?
No, in fact, the vertical one for Alan, at one point, I had finished the painting, but it was not Alan's music, so I had to go in and make a new painting over that. So it would be a painting about Alan's music. So underneath that vertical painting is another painting.
Right. Does that happen very often, that you literally are transforming something to such a degree that it becomes a virtual new painting?
All it takes is one stroke, and you may find that you no longer have that painting you had.
Right. Okay.
And then you're on your next. But on the other hand, there's times when you think you're far from finishing a painting, and it only takes one stroke and it's done.
All right. So it works both ways.
Like Ron and Bob's the painting that of their music. At one point I said, oh, well, this is going to be hours. More hours have to be spent on this. This is nowhere near. And then, Ben was there and I said, horizontal one's almost done, but this one, I don't know. And he left, and in 15 minutes, that one was done. And the horizontal one took just days.
Yeah,
So
that's the way it goes.
Right. It just develops that way. You can't really predict it. It's just this.
Right.
It unfolds before your eyes and how you interpret it.
Now, when I listened to and saw the video that of Deirdre, you know, how she was creating and what she saw in the different music, it was very insightful for me. I got very excited about stencils. I've done a painting with stencils, but nobody will ever know because my method of painting, the stencil part is so far down. No one will go, yeah, Ellen, sure, you use stencils, right? And I have done a couple where I was, you know, that the two newest pieces are definitely music inspired. So, but you know, like at one point in the video that Deirdre was working with Alan's, she described colors and how it made her feel, and the colors were these light, luscious purples and colors, and I go, that's not what I saw, but wow, yeah, they're there. So it, it was nice to go through that experience and find what someone else has done with that experience.
Right. Good.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if I can, just a couple of things that I found that about your approach to painting, Ellen, and that was how much drawing there is behind your paintings. And that really struck me. Like you really have you know, there's a skeleton behind that, because a lot of your paintings are so loose and free, and you hang all that on this drawing, that was really interesting to me. And then I the other thing I sort of felt about your work, the paintings for Alan and the paintings that you did for Ron and Bob's music, was the palette was so different, that the subject matter was pretty similar, but you conveyed the music more through your choice of colors than maybe subject matter. And I thought that was striking to me. But the drawing especially, so that was inspiring. Like I have to go back and really draw, because it's just, you know, it's you and your eye and that pencil, and it's, you know, no hiding, kind of no fooling around. It's just that pencil. So that was very, very interesting to see. I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I do a lot of drawing before, planning, drawing on the canvas, you know. And then I start painting, and the painting goes, oh no, this is the way we're going. Forget what you thought we were going to do.
Deirdre, I know that you had on the left-hand side of the painting, and they eventually ended up disappearing and became a path as opposed to tracks.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that was when I started to really just treat everything the same way. And, you know, I wanted to have the field and the path more related to the buildings. And, you know, I didn't want that, you know, they almost at one point looked like two separate paintings. And that was hard to try to come back and integrate the two. And I think that's when I luckily dropped that napkin full of paint on the painting, and I just started, you know, it really, you know, I was splashing that color all around, and it really it did bring it together. You know, it was that underpainting, as you know, really it helped adhere, the whole, really cement the whole thing, I thought.
Right. Yeah, I know that you were definitely unhappy at one point with, like, the left-hand side wasn't speaking to the right hand.
Right, right. Yeah. And I actually love the left side now. I like that really abstract, scratchy kind of feeling to it, much more so
Uh,
than the buildings.
I hope to
Anyway.
see it someday.
Yeah,
So
yeah. These things change. That's an interesting thing is you can, finish a paint and you're really happy and that was fun. That was a great day. And then come back to it in 3 weeks or so. And it's like, oh God, you just don't, I don't know if you find that to be true, Ellen, with your work, but I have come back to paintings and I thought, where did I get off thinking that was a masterpiece? I mean, because
Well, I've had it where I've gotten to a point where I said, this may be finished. And I put it aside. And then I don't know, tell you how many times that Sandy's had to eat dinner with a wet painting sitting at the chair next to him. And I'm paying more attention to the painting than him because I'm like constantly looking over there.
yeah,
And sometimes it's finished. And other times I have to go back and just do this one more little stroke, which
right.
leads to another and another and another. But
Is that true with music? I would think.
Let Bob speak to that.
You do something that you just love, and then you go back and you listen to what you
And
recorded.
Bob didn't talk about Deirdre's painting either. I just wondered what he thought about that.
Well, just like one stroke changes the painting, one note, next thing you know, you're deviated off the path a little bit. You may get back, you may not. And on Deirdre's painting, she basically there was two themes that I heard. One was a lack of clarity and given a strong image of where to go. And a lot of times in playing, people are kind of hiding things and hiding it in the music, and maybe some of the communication leaks out accidentally or otherwise, and that there is, you could be in the woods, but at least for me, I'm always kind of aware that there's a road outside this little peaceful area or a city or something that's putting some edge to that peacefulness that may or may not be achieved in the walk in the woods or the sitting in the woods or playing. And a sudden noise that sounds like it's not belonging there can change the song. So a lot of times the songs can change. They're maybe speaking to events that are happening. You could be playing a small section of fullness, and the next thing you know, there's some tension that's going to last for a period of time, depending on if you think you've resolved the tension. Again, I'm not that structured that I can. I'm even sometimes aware of why things are moving back and forth, and I rely on that information of the people around me. Ron, he'll say, "Well, where were you going there? What the heck did you just do?" And I'll be sure, and we'll talk about it a little bit, and come up with a little idea that sounds like at least puts an image in our head of what it sounded like. So yes, I see the peaceful place in Deirdre's painting, the colorful woods.
do you relate to that also, the idea of the sudden morphing to a different form just by a few notes or a different?
Absolutely. The gypsy thing was probably pretty structured, but even then, you know, a note or two too soon or too late, or with a little bit different emphasis, and you're you know, you're suddenly taking a side trip, and you know, if you're trying to do something structured for a reason, then you'll try to get back,
Right.
without a specific goal in mind. I won't care where I'm going, you know, I'll just go there.
Okay.
I guess you can kind of do that, but then that definitely the left side would be different from the right side. So I can see how, you know, maybe that was picked up somehow.
Yeah, let me just add to that when with Bob's song, I went down to we practice in his shop in the Catholic Church in Point Pleasant. And I went down there and I knew, and Bob said, well, let me here, listen to this. So he played this song to me, Cantina Waltz, and I really liked it. And I could get the first part of it, but the second part, there's 2 or 3 different parts to it. And I couldn't quite get the second part or the third part, but I recorded it and brought it home and played it over and over and over. And I really never did get the second and the third part, but I got something that went over it, I think, fine. And it kind of added a little bit more texture to it because it went over it. You know, it took the same amount of time and the notes were not discordant, and it just fit really well. So it was just it's nice to see sometimes when you improvise and you do things that aren't exactly what you're trying to do, but they work. And other times when you even make mistakes, but you can kind of quickly turn those mistakes into something that works. And that's really a satisfying part of playing popular or jazz music. And I'm sure you could do it in classical music too. But those little things that turn, you know, that you just, oh yeah, it was no mistake. Like Miles Davis said, there's no mistakes. It's just a matter of what you play next. You know, what's the next note? And you can repeat that mistake and people will go, oh, that's pretty cool. That's not a mistake.
There are opportunities.
I'm sorry, Alan, does that sound familiar to you in your experience?
Well, actually, when you guys were talking, I was thinking that of the difference between painting and music, or one of the differences that so you have someone who first makes the music. They create the music. They communicate maybe by writing it down as notes. But for it to be able to communicate to the next audience, it has to be either played again by the person who created it or by another musician. They pick up the instrument, they play the music. So now if it's not the person who wrote it, if it was written 100 years ago, then it's the thoughts of the person who wrote it channeled through the musician who's now playing it. And each person who's playing it is bringing their own artistry to it.
Right.
So each time it's going to be different.
It's going to change. Alan, that makes sense to you?
Kind of an ongoing underlying thing in classical music is how much is, you know, the what goes down on paper, how much does the performer add? And in fact, one thing that's interesting, up into the end of the 18th century or so, it was customary that or early 19th century, that any really great composer or performer should be able to improvise.
Uh-huh.
So it was customary, all the concerti that were written by Mozart or Haydn or these people assumed that the performer, whether it was the composer or somebody else, would improvise cadenzas at various points that were clearly marked in the score as opportunities for improvisation. And Beethoven, until well into his 30s, was more famous in Vienna as an incredible improviser than as a composer of written down music. And now,
Wow.
and then of course, then it shifted and improvisation just became out. And in recent years, recent decades, it's kind of crept back in, but it's never received the respect that it once had. But even now, there are composers who write music where the notation says, okay, at this point, the performer can improvise a few bars. And there's some performers who actually who go back to some of the traditional music and add in little personal sections of their own. And so there is this constant back and forth between performer and composer, which is one of the kind of exciting aspects of the classical music tradition. Because in some respects, no piece is ever completely finished.
Well,
that sounds familiar.
whereas in paintings and drawings, at one point, that's it. It's like a personal letter, communication from the painter down to. I mean, we have paintings where Leonardo da Vinci has put his fingerprints on it. It's right there. You could probably pull up his FBI folder and make sure that it was Leonardo who did it, because he left his fingerprints all on there.
That FBI stands for Florence Bureau of Investigation.
Right. So, I mean, there it is. It is.
Yeah, that's interesting.
A finished thing,
Right.
whereas music is created a new experience each time it is.
Yeah, but at some point, the composer has to let go. The composer doesn't have any chance in the matter, because the score and whatever it says on the score is going to live past the composer's.
Absolutely. And sometimes what was the string instrument is now improved to, completely different instrument.
Yeah. But with jazz, I mean, some of the jazzes are like 8 bars, right? And then you listen to the song, and a guy, 3 or 4 musicians improvise for 15 minutes.
Sure.
And so it's all the original composition is just a launching pad, so that these modern jazz guys from that went to Juilliard or just brilliant geniuses can improvise for 15 minutes. And on a lower level, I think, like with me and maybe with Bob, we can take an old song that somebody's written, Am I Blue, or any number of songs, and every time play it differently depending on the rhythm. Well, let's play this swing. Let's play this Western swing. Let's play this just slow, almost like new age ambiance music. And you're playing the same basic notes, though you can't improvise, the same basic score, but you're playing it completely different every time. And you can't do that with a painting. Like you say, the painting's there. It's done.
Yeah, but you
can interpret it. You can interpret it differently, but you can't really, play it differently.
You can talk about it differently.
But you
exactly.
Well,
wait a minute. Let Deirdre talk.
You could also make 6 different paintings.
That's true.
Of the same.
That's true.
Subject matter.
Same theme.
You're just doing them. You're doing it.
You can't imagine if you, let's say, if you sold a painting to somebody and that person took the painting and hung it on her wall and lived with it for a couple of years. And after, say, 2 years, decided, I think that painting needs a little more white over there. So
Interesting.
she takes out her paintbrush and her palette and goes,
That's
I
interesting.
would think of that. That would be a desecration.
No, actually, we used to go over to Saul Lipson's house, and I'd say, Saul, you did something with that painting. And he said, you're right. I put a red box there where a black box used
Was
to
it
be.
his own
So wait a
painting?
second.
Oh, it definitely was his own painting.
Well, see, that's different.
Oh, yeah,
With
that's
your
true.
own painting, if you do
That's
it
true.
with your own painting, that's fine. You can change
Okay, I missed that.
whenever you want. You can. There's
That's true.
famous story about Turner, who had hung his painting in this show, and he came back to it and he looked at it and looked at all the other paintings, and he didn't like, and it somehow there's something, and he borrowed somebody else's palette and a paintbrush and added one red dot.
You can do that, sure.
But if you're
You could do that forever.
but if you're not the artist, then hands off.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
That's my point.
Absolutely.
I was just gonna.
Great.
I was just gonna say. I think you can kill a painting. You can overwork a painting. You can.
Kill us all.
And then you definitely know, forget it, put it away, start over. But I have found that sort of my favorite paintings, the paintings I think are most successful, there's always that lingering doubt of, I don't know, this isn't quite finished. I mean, that, which is kind of an interesting problem for me. I think that that's, you're always going back and kind of staring at them, and gee, I could, it's, and at some point you kind of have to use some discipline and say, forget it. It's done. And it sounds like the same thing applies.
This concludes the quest for insights into the elusive realm of creativity by witnessing art being made and by listening to the comments of the musicians and artists.
I know what I'm going to do, but I don't know what the paint is going to do.
It wasn't sort of what I was striving for. It just sort of happened.
It was halfway between the easel and the trash can.
I like accidents too.
It's really the painting that indicates what comes next.
I think it's done, although I never know if it's really done.